Hello, world. Welcome to the Shannon Joy Show. Hello, world, and welcome to the Shannon Joy Show. We're broadcasting live from the Joy Virtual Studio right here in the beautiful Finger Lakes region of New York State. It is so great to be with all of you today. It is Monday, April 6th, and you see the headline of today's show. Open the effing strait, says Donald Trump. You crazy bastards, or you'll be in living hell. This is from the Mad King Donald Trump over the weekend. Everyone is talking about the instability. The narrative of chaos and instability persists in the year 2026 in the United States of America and abroad. And we are going to go through the full statement and the reaction from Trump supporters and Trump detractors, and many Trump supporters who used to be supporters but are now detractors. Well, because Trump is crazy. Or is he really? We just don't know. We're going to hit those headlines today on the Shannon Joy Show. And you see later in the program, 1 p.m. Eastern time, we are going to be welcoming Tiffany Cianci into the Joy Virtual Studio to talk about private equity, the canary in the coal mine, signaling economic collapse in the United States of America and abroad. What is happening in private equity markets and in private credit should astound people. We're also going to talk about the expansion of liability protection, extending past the pharmaceutical companies and now being granted to chemical companies as well. Tiffany is going to talk about what is going down in some of the southern states as the governors are being overridden, as the people are saying, hey, we don't want glyphosate sprayed on our crops. We don't want chemical companies to not be held liable for causing cancers or harming humans. Well, it looks as if Trump and the Republicans and the Maha Coalition in Washington, D.C. are going to extend the exact same liability protections that were given to the pharmaceutical corporations, which is why they create so many toxic shots. It's now being extended to chemical corporations as well. Tiffany Cianci is going to be here with an exclusive report on that, and they're rolling this out from the bottom up. So we have to be ready to coordinate and organize in resistance to this, among other things. So we have a lot to get to today on the show. I hope you all had a wonderful Easter weekend. We had a wonderful Easter weekend at the Joy household, and I have a little bit to talk about in that area. But welcome, everyone. We're ripping through the headlines every day together. I'm white knuckled on this roller coaster with all of you. Not left, not right, just the truth, straight up, no chaser, every day on the Shannon Joy Show. And we are broadcasting, of course, live on Rumble. We're live on Substack, on Twitter, on Facebook, YouTube, and yes, of course, Spreely TV, which is Roku TV and Apple TV. The SJ Show is uploaded for podcast to every podcast platform. So if you are a podcast listener to the Shannon Joy Show, please download the SJ Show so you never miss a show. Give us a 5-star rating if you like what we do every day. And of course, comment and leave a recommendation, because that helps us to evade the algorithms and grow this show organically. Love all of the chatters on Substack, Twitter, and Rumble. Inez Annie Cyrus is producing the SJ Show today. She's keeping an eye on Twitter and Substack and on YouTube. So if you guys have a comment on any of those platforms, I can't see them, but Annie can. She will copy and paste them, and hopefully I can say hello to all of you. Of course, the Rumble live chat is already raring to go. CM 1968, great to see you. Chronozone 777, Buskman, Guitar Lily, you guys all look amazing today. And one of the first comments of the day from YouTube, Sharon Starlaki, 99026. Good afternoon, Shannon. Many blessings to all. Every day seems more and more insane than the previous day. I agree with you, Sharon. It's crazy. On Substack, Awakened Remedy says we should really mention the data centers that are harming the planet, and they're all over the United States of America. Awakened, I absolutely agree with you. And we've been reporting on those data centers here on the SJ show for over 14 months, probably even before that. We've had many experts on the expansion of data centers. And interestingly enough, the data centers, the single largest area of expansion for data centers is happening in mostly red states. Texas, 140 plus data centers on the docket to be built in the next couple years. Ohio behind Texas, and then Virginia behind Ohio and Texas. So those are the three states where they're really pushing them out. Interestingly enough, very few projects in New York State or California, blue states for whatever reason aren't seeing these, but it's a huge problem and we have to fight like hell against these data centers. Tiffany Cianci will be on with us. I'm sure she's going to have something to say about that as well. Tim Seltsam on Substack. The truth, like joy, is naturally beautiful. Oh, thank you so much, Tim. I so appreciate all of you. So we have much to get to today on the SJ show. But first, I would like to thank our sponsors, Peter Schiff and Schiff Gold, the satellite phone store, sat123.com/joy, PCM and Associates, that is Don Plano, and of course, our friends over at The Wellness Company. You'll be hearing from them today on the show. Please consider our sponsors. If you are in the market for any of their products or services, it really helps me out when you use the promo code JOY and you use the URLs that we pop up in the show notes every day. That is how we keep the lights on here at the Shannon Joy Show. And as you know, we're completely independent. So I appreciate all of you who are patronizing our amazing sponsors. Let's get to the live chat. CM1968 with the first chat of the day on Rumble. Morning, 777. How was your Easter? Good morning, Shannon. How was your Easter? It was amazing. My Easter was amazing. We had everyone over to the house. We went to Easter service with the family. I love when I have the whole family home, and my son Jack was up from college visiting for the weekend. We had a lovely Easter service, and then we welcomed my mother and her husband and my mother-in-law and her husband to the house for Easter dinner. And it was just amazing. I actually, for the very first time, turned out the real china. My mother gifted me her grandmother's real china, and my mother-in-law gifted me her grandmother's authentic silver. And so I finally pulled everything out and was able to surprise my mother and my mother-in-law with their grandmother's or their mother's china and silver. So setting the table was lovely. I had a really great time doing that, and they absolutely loved it. And you know, I love things that are authentic, right? I've never ever used the real stuff before. We've always been busy, more disposable. But I guess the older I get and the more everything seems fake to me, whether it's social media, politicians, their promises, the news, you name it. It's just everything is so fake with AI and deep fakes. I'm really beginning to cling to what is real relationships, real time. And it's wonderful. I don't think I looked at my phone or social media one time yesterday. We put on Gone with the Wind. It was running all day on the TV, and we were popping in a great old movie, and it was just a lovely day. So that's what we did at the Joy household. It was absolutely beautiful. And it's interesting. I was having a conversation with my very good friend, Larry Sharp. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Larry Sharp, but he has been running for governor in the state of New York for the better part of 10 years, trying to do it from outside of the two-party political, spectrum. He's run as a libertarian. He's running again for 2026. And we were having a conversation, which, by the way, I'm going to tell you guys about in a moment, because I'm talking about something with Larry Sharp, and I want to throw it past all of you in just a minute. But Larry was saying that his daughter is an actress. He lives in Manhattan, and his daughter is pursuing acting in the theater and live theater. And he made a statement last week. He said, that's where everyone's going to go. As everything moves towards AI and everything is fake or deep fake and actors are not real anymore. They're computer generated or avatars, and we don't really even know whether it's a real actor or not. He's like, the only way people are going to get anything real is if they actually, get up and drive to the theater and watch like live action theater. And that's where things are going to go. So while it is very frightening what is happening with AI and it's unsettling and it feels fake, I do think as humans, we have this innate ability to see what is fake, to pursue and value what is real, and move through technological advances like the Industrial Revolution and the agricultural revolution and all the other revolutions in a way where we choose the things about whatever the technological advance is that we like, that helps for humanity to flourish, and then we reject the things that will destroy humanity. And there are certainly people in positions of power today who have accumulated power around this president of the United States of America, Donald Trump, the Mad King, who are seeking to destroy humanity, to control humanity, to enslave humanity using these technological advances, the data centers, AI, surveillance, you name it. And that is our mission here, to reject that, to resist that, to organize from the bottom up so that we can take what is good and omit what is bad. And hopefully pass on to our children another 50, maybe 75 years of liberty, of freedom, where they aren't slaves. And I know that's what Larry Sharpe is fighting for. He has kids. I have young kids. And so many of you out there have children or grandchildren. And shame on us here in the United States of America if we've enjoyed the blessings of liberty that we have been granted by our founding fathers and by Almighty God through the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States of America, these precious freedoms, precious liberty. Shame on us if we lose it in our lifetimes. And I'm just not into doing that. So this is why we come every day together. And that's why we have these conversations. That's why we go through the insane headlines every day and try to figure out what is going on. And I know that everyone here today watching, those of you, many of you are independents, some of you are Democrats, Republicans, that regardless of your political affiliation, we can agree on some very, very basic truths. And I think that's where we need to move in the country today. Mama C 1996 said, use the real stuff every so often for no other reason whatsoever. Super fun for a change of pace. I loved it. I loved setting the table. I'm into all of that stuff, right? Coronazone 777, I see you on the live chat. Great to see you. Buskman says, get Eric Watson on your show, Shannon. He's running for representative in Ohio. Well, let's talk about running for elections for a minute, because I do have something that I'm going to announce today that I'm considering. And I would like for all of you to tell me what you think about this. And I'm going to be praying about this. And I've talked to Devastatingly Handsome Dr. Joy about this. And I've also talked to Larry Sharpe, who I just mentioned a moment ago. Yes, Larry Sharpe and I have been talking over the past couple of weeks. We began talking about 3 weeks ago. And as I mentioned, Larry Sharpe is running in New York State for the governor of New York State in this next cycle. And he is running on the libertarian line, the independent line, if he gets enough signatures, and the blank no party. So appealing to disenfranchised Democrats and Republicans in New York State with a platform of liberty and a platform of anti-corruption. Now, Larry has been doing this for quite some time. I've known Larry for about 10 years, a little over 10 years. I supported his run as a libertarian candidate, I want to say 10 years ago, and went on the campaign trail with him a few times. I like Larry a lot. I've been watching him and his run over the past 10 years. He got things right during the devastating lockdowns of 2020. And believe me, I paid attention. And a couple weeks ago, Larry called me and asked me if I would like to join him on the ticket as his lieutenant governor, as he runs for governor of New York State. And as you all know, I have never, ever, ever entertained in any way, shape, or form running for political office, especially as a Democrat or a Republican, because you guys know that I believe those parties are completely and hopelessly corrupted. They certainly are in New York State. And so there has never been a path for me to get involved in political office or civics because of the corruption of the two parties. And frankly, they didn't want me anyway. So I have worked with a lot of candidates and I have run independent candidates. I have raised money for independent candidates. I've been very active, as you all know, in civics in New York State. And it is a horribly corrupt state. And yes, I've hit a brick wall every single time I've engaged. And I think you guys know what I am going to announce to you today on April 6th, 2026. Yes, I am considering joining Larry Sharpe on the ticket to run for Lieutenant Governor of New York State. I'm going to be making my decision by the end of the week. I've been praying about it. I hope that you all will pray for me as I try to come to this decision. I've been talking, of course, with devastatingly handsome Dr. Joy about this. And this is something, for whatever reason, at first when Larry mentioned it, I'm like, are you crazy? There's no way I'm going to do that. And then he called again like a week later and said, no, I'm really serious. And I said, well, it would be a hoot. I mean, I would love to go out and meet everyone, and it's a long shot. I mean, oh my goodness, so corrupt in New York State. The idea that we could even make a dent is questionable. Whether or not we can even get on the ballot. I think we have to get 60,000 signatures in New York State from any party. So it could be Republican, Democrat, blank no party. All you have to do is be registered to vote if we're on an independent line. And so that's going to be a heavy lift. But I do have a lot of connections in New York State. And lieutenant governor is largely a figurehead position. There aren't real responsibilities. And it really is coalition building. So they usually will look for someone who has a little bit of name recognition. And so as I mentioned, I'm very connected, especially to the medical freedom community. So even if we were, to win, which again is a long shot, but even if we were to win, Larry would be in Albany. I would not have to leave my family. I could, fulfill the role as lieutenant governor from my home here in upstate. And we did discuss, though, if I were to do this, we together would run on anti-corruption. I'm very, very curious, and I want to explore, what does an anti-corruption coalition look like? How do we rein in both parties? How do we expose both parties? What does that look like? Can we do it in New York State? If we can do it in New York State, can we export it to other states? I mean, if we can do it in the most corrupt state in the union, couldn't we take this as a template and move it out to rein in these two absolutely corrupted political parties and place some pressure on them? I don't know. I don't know if we can do it. But I do know one guy who has been doing it and trying to do it very valiantly for many, many years, and that's Larry Sharpe. So that's the first step, is that I do trust him. And then the other area that I would like to contribute would be to be working with the medical freedom organizations across New York State to put together one of the most aggressive, comprehensive medical freedom platforms and legislative packages that we've seen in the country. And I would love to talk to the folks over at Children's Health Defense, and Naomi Wolf over at Daily Clout, and Leslie Manukian, who was very successful in crafting a mega medical freedom bill that passed in the great state of Iowa. And so that would be kind of the mission. And this is what I will be considering over the next couple of days. I'll be making a decision by Friday. So yes, and I see you guys on the live chat. So let me know what you think about that. Ollie Robin 9, I see you. Shannon for Prez in 2028. Local, local, local. I'm not interested in doing anything remotely to do with Washington, D.C., even more horribly corrupted in Washington, D.C. That is not something that I would consider, at least at this point. But I see you, Guitar Lily. Do it, Shannon. Go for it. What do you think? If you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching on Substack or the Twitter, should I join Larry Sharpe in an independent run for the governor of New York State as his lieutenant governor? That is the question. Maybe I'll put a poll out on that a little later on Twitter. But yeah, I mean, listen, I have been telling you guys for years, we've got to get active. Doesn't mean we have to win, right? We just have to get in the game. We just have to get involved. And I want to put my money where my mouth is. I want to engage in the same way that I encourage all of you to engage. And again, it doesn't matter if we lose. You know, I've often referred to this scripture in Isaiah 1:17 when the people cried out and asked, you know, what should we do in these horribly corrupt times? Through Isaiah, God said this: cease to do evil, learn to do good, seek justice, rebuke the oppressor, defend the fatherless, plead for the widow. And that's what you do. There are no guarantees that we're going to win. There are no guarantees that we're going to be able to achieve justice in our lifetime. But that doesn't matter. God doesn't ask us to win. He's in charge of the winning. He just asks us to be obedient and get in the game and do the things here on this world in the time that we have to honor him, to exalt him, and to be a witness for him. And so it's something that has guided this show. It has guided my life. So many people get discouraged when they lose elections, when we lose elections. I never do. I see every opportunity to build a coalition, to build opposition, to have conversations as a blessing. And that is what I'll do if I do decide to run with Larry. So yes, Guitar Lily, get Nancy Orticelli to help you with outreach in Western New York. Absolutely. I know Nancy Orticelli. I know Jim Ostrowski. They're friends of the show. They've been on the show. We go way back. And of course, we have worked with Children's Health Defense, Mary Holland. We have worked with the folks over at Teachers for Choice. That is our good friend Michael Kane, Rita Palma, John Gilmore, big coalition here in New York State. And if I decide to run, you can be sure I'll be reaching out to all of them. Honor Seeker says, hell yeah, go run, young lady, go run. Longtime listener, I like Larry Sharpe. It is up to you. Well, we would go in understanding that it's a long shot, right? But there's still work to be done in New York State. And so please keep me in your prayers as I consider this opportunity very prayerfully. And I'll let you know, I'm going to have an answer for Larry in a couple days. So we'll see where this goes. All right, we have more to talk about here on the Shannon Joy Show before we bring in the amazing Tiffany Cianci, who will be joining us at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So at this point, I would like to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to get into the headline of today: Donald Trump's absolutely insane statement. It only gets crazier. He pushed it out on Truth Social yesterday, and it has everyone wondering, is he indeed a mad king? We've been telling you that he's a mad king for quite some time here on the SJ Show. It seems to be gaining a lot of steam as we witness, just truly unpredictable and an unstable rhetoric from this president, which we're going to get into in just a moment when we come back. So keep it tuned right here. We'll be back in a minute on the Shannon Joy Show. Dr. Kelly Victory is actually battling breast cancer right now, which is absolutely tragic, but it is her story, and she's going to tell her story in just a couple weeks. And she's one of the people that you would never, ever, ever see it coming. She did everything right? She exercised, she ate very clean, She avoided processed foods. She had zero symptoms when she went in for a routine mammogram in 2023. And she walked out of that mammogram with a diagnosis of aggressive cancer that could have been fatal, actually, if it was found later. So it revealed a hard truth for Kelly. Even healthy people get cancer. And it exposed a much bigger issue. Most modern medicine is reactive and not preventative. You wait for a scare until you start to care. And every day, our bodies, as you all know, are under constant pressure from vaccines, as we know, stress, toxins, inflammation, and immune strain. The damage builds quietly over time, year after year, until disease starts to form. So we've talked about all types of ways to treat and prevent cancers. We've talked about ivermectin. We've talked about fasting. We've talked about, as you know, avoiding vaccines. That's one of my main preventative measures when it comes to cancers. But Dr. Kelly Victory asks a different question. What can we do to daily support, or what can we do daily to support the body before something goes wrong? Now, this led her to formulate a product called Shield. So Shield is a two-part natural system. It's designed to support immune balance, antioxidant defense, and cellular health. Exactly the systems that you want to keep very strong to live a long, healthy life. In the morning, you drink a high-dose nutraceutical cocoa mix. Then with food, you take the soft gels. With ingredients like medicinal mushrooms, turmeric, green tea, olive leaf, berberine, and black cumin seed oil, Shield gives your body the tools it needs to keep your cells healthy. So right now, for the Joy audience, if you go to twc.health/joy, that's twc.health/joy, and use the promo code JOY, you'll get 10% off plus free shipping on all orders for U.S. residents. That's twc.health/joy, and make sure you use the promo code JOY to get 10% off plus free shipping. And by the way, you can use the promo code JOY for all of your purchases at twc.health/joy. They always have a discount for the Joy audience, and we are so thankful for their sponsorship. Welcome back, everyone, to the Shannon Joy Show. In just about 13 minutes, we're going to welcome the Tiffany Cianci into the Joy virtual studio to talk about what is happening in private credit and private equity. The canary in the coal mine signaling economic chaos and potential collapse in the next 6 to 12 months. Tiffany is going to join us in just a few minutes. Going back to the live chats, I see you, Sharon Zakarli, 9026 on Substack. Do it, Shannon. Join Larry Sharp, running for Lieutenant Governor of New York State. You'd be great in getting our issues out there that are so important. I agree. God is guiding you. There's no beating the machine. Look at how Trump went from 2016 to 2026. They got us all. And yes, it's very difficult to beat the machine, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't try. Striding Conservative, I see you on the live chat, David Leach. Go for it. I'd move to New York State just so I could vote for you. That is hilarious. Who would move to New York State, man? Buskman is all on board. I love that. Who else do we have here? There was another good comment about getting the platform. More important even than winning or losing is exposing the corruption in New York State. And as I mentioned, we would be running on an anti-corruption platform and building an anti-corruption platform. So overwhelmingly, it looks like a lot of you are on board for that. So I'm going to be talking, like I mentioned, we're going to be making that decision in just a couple days. So the headline today, let's get into some of the headlines and what we're seeing happening in the political and cultural arena before we bring Tiffany Cianci on. Just an absolutely insane Truth Social post from what now everyone is calling the Mad King Donald Trump. This came out just yesterday, full statement in the narrative of chaos and instability. Trump pushed this out. Tuesday, tomorrow, will be Power Plant Day and Bridge Day all wrapped up in one in Iran. There will be nothing like it. Open the effing strait, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch, all caps, praise be to Allah. On Easter Sunday, Donald Trump praising Allah in an incredibly insane tweet that now everyone is trying to decipher. And I don't know if you can. It's not even clear that Trump even wrote the tweet or the post. It is very clear that the narrative of chaos is being disseminated and he is being presented as a madman, first by Alex Jones, now Brett Weinstein has buyer's remorse. As you know, Alex Jones and Brett Weinstein and many big platformed voices within the medical freedom community and beyond are now having buyer's remorse over the new Trump. It's not the same Trump that Alex Jones was pimping to his audience or Brett Weinstein was pimping to his audience. They're all making excuses as to why they got behind Trump, when meanwhile, right here on the SJ show, and many were holding the line saying this guy was a madman in 2016, 17, 18, 19, and 20, right? And he continues to be so today. So this was all very obvious. And I have a response tweet to Brett Weinstein because this is what he had to say about this. And Brett Weinstein is important because Brett Weinstein is a pipeline and a very important influencer to the influencers. I happen to think that he might be controlled opposition. And that became evident to me when he pivoted away from medical freedom and what happened in 2020, which was a disaster, to get behind the guy politically who did it to us in the first place. So Brett is getting pushback, but this is what he wrote. Trump, who I advocated for in 2024, has gone full mad king. In considering my responsibility, I'd ask that you would remember the case that I made, said Brett, rested on the fact that Biden and Harris were figureheads, shielding a cabal that couldn't be held to account, whereas Trump could, and now we have to hold him accountable. And so now Brett, among others in the conservative right, the medical freedom community, Brett Weinstein has never been a conservative. He was actually more of a liberal-leaning leftist, opposition platform during COVID and the rollout of the toxic shots. But what he's saying here as well, it was a lesser of two evils. And Biden and Harris are only figureheads. Biden wasn't really in control of things. Trump could come in and actually change things. And I said to them at the time, Trump is a Trojan horse. I don't think that Trump has any more agency than Biden or Harris ever did. I've always thought that Trump was bought and paid for, a figurehead, a puppet, doing the bidding of his puppet masters. Now, recently, I'm beginning to wonder if Trump might be a little more wicked and diabolical and maybe powerful than I ever gave him credit for, considering what he's doing, what he's building here in the US with the technocratic police state and deploying ICE agents as a domestic military force that answer to him, a private militaristic force that essentially answers to Trump alone. And then when we see what he's doing in Gaza, again, another police force, a military force that answers to him, the Board of Peace, which is his governing body in Gaza, appointing himself as the king of Gaza, and also moving very quickly to establish currencies that he controls, the USD1. So as I'm witnessing all of this, I'm wondering, is Trump really the mad king? I know I coined it. Now, Brett Weinstein is picking it up, and a lot of other people are picking up the Mad King moniker, which we've been talking about for quite some time. But there are a lot of things moving here, and we actually aren't sure. I think anyone who says they know what is going on with Trump is lying to you. So I responded to Brett Weinstein that, I think it's more evident than ever that Trump has always been, always, from day one, from the moment he came down the golden escalator, diabolically complicit in the assault on liberty as evidenced by his first term. Trump was never an outsider, in my opinion, ever. He was always working with them, only he was working as a Trojan horse. I think you're a nice person. I wrote this to Brett. I hope he's a nice person. But your support of Trump's candidacy and presidency for a second time, as well as the support of other high-profile so-called freedom advocates, has now opened Pandora's box and given an incredibly dangerous political actor, Donald Trump, a 16-month head start in destroying humanity and liberty, not just in the United States of America, but destabilizing the entire world, setting us up for potentially World War III. Horrifying headlines from Germany as they are locking in men ages 18, I think, to 44, as they prepare for a potential draft in World War III. How insane is that? This all goes back to Trump's actions and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, along with, other very important trading hubs. Trump has now used his time to unleash hell in the United States of America and instability, as evidenced by the tweet yesterday on Easter Sunday, absolutely rug pulling all of the Christian conservatives who support him, praising Allah. Open the effing strait, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. What is that? What is that designed to evoke? Fear, chaos, instability. It's crazy, and I think it's on purpose. I wonder how mad the Mad King actually is. From my perspective, there are only three ways to analyze this Mad King narrative. Number one, Trump is actually sick and mad and is going crazy and he's insane. I think that's unlikely. Number two, Trump is playing the role of the insane Mad King and actively shielding the cabal that cannot be held to account, according to Brett Weinstein, to achieve a larger purpose. Meaning Trump is playing crazy in the same way that Biden lost his mind during his presidency. Only I think that Trump might be acting, might be playing the role, kind of like a WWE wrestling position. And then a third option, and this is actually the most frightening to me, seeing that he controls the nuclear football, and at this point he controls our military and is deploying ICE to airports across the United States of America, to the interior of this country, and is also threatened now to deploy ICE, a militaristic police state organization, to elections, to voting sites for the midterm elections. So number three, Trump is completely sane. He's acting insane and is actually more wicked than anyone could have ever imagined. A leader among the cabal. Maybe he's not a puppet. Maybe he's one of the guys engineering things. I don't know. But a leader among the cabal that cannot be held to account, according to Brett Weinstein. And the Trojan horse for a global technocratic police state and slavery. No one can know what is true here, but all of the options on the table here are terrible, terrible for liberty. And so, in terms of Brett Weinstein and the buyer's remorse, there were many, many, many people, Brett. In fact, I spoke with you at the Brownstone Gala. There were many people who were trying to remind people of Trump of 2020, and that fell on deaf ears. Brett Weinstein and others in positions of leadership blew off our concerns and actually ousted most of us from the movement. And unfortunately, Brett, you were terribly wrong. And rather than trying to justify your error, you might want to stop and listen to the people who saw this coming. Because now what Brett Weinstein is trying to do is pivot and move us. As everyone realizes that Trump is one of the things, maybe he's insane, maybe he isn't, maybe he's doing this on purpose, maybe he's a puppet. None of these are good options. And as more and more people understand this, We now have people like Brett Weinstein who are going to come out and try to steer us and move us to whatever the next political savior will be. And so we're going to hear Alex Jones telling us that we need Elon Musk to run for president. We're going to hear people like Brett Weinstein say we need to bring in JD Vance for president. Heck, maybe they're just going to off Donald Trump and move JD Vance in anyway. I don't know what is happening here. And anyone who thinks they know what's going on just is lying to themselves. All we can deal with is what is in front of our faces. And at this point, from my perspective, it's chaos. So the best we can do is hunker down, get prepared, make sure that you're connected at the community level, get prepared financially, spiritually, economically, and hunker down, because they are going to deploy more and more chaos on a regular basis. And that is my analysis of what is going on with Trump. We're just going to have to wait and see what happens. Let's go to the live chat. We're waiting on Tiffany Cianci. She should be joining us pretty soon in the Joy virtual studio. Lisa Christensen from Facebook, great to see you. The phrase about Allah was his way of sneering at Iranians. It was a way of denigrating them and their God. It seems obvious to me. I don't think so. It doesn't matter that it was Easter. He's mentally ill, sadistic, ignorant, and malevolent in every way. I agree. There is this guy is playing with his prey right now, Donald Trump, from my perspective. Or maybe he's crazy. I just don't know. Kelly McCarty, great to see you on the live chat. I love seeing you. Such valuable commentary from Kelly. Ali Robin 9, great to see you. Brett Weinstein's kept on a short leash by his wife, Heather Heying. Yeah, there's something off about the Weinsteins. Both Brett Weinstein and his brother, Eric Weinstein. And this was a piece from Johnny Vedmore. I met Johnny Vedmore in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, just a little over a month ago, as we covered the very, very important international case against Bill Gates, Albert Bourla, and Dutch officials relating to the forced and coerced injection of people with the COVID shots. It's a civil rights case, and I was with Sasha Latapova in Amsterdam for that case, and we'll be continuing to report on that. But I was able to meet Johnny Vedmore. He was a very interesting guy, interesting character, and this is what he had to say about the Weinsteins in terms of the technocratic police state and what they have planned for. We've talked about the dark enlightenment. He said the dark enlightenment is use the intellectual dark web to sell American conservatives as a sensible option. In reality, Peter Thiel was always lurking in the background, and Thiel is lurking with his puppet, JD Vance. Be prepared for them to try to move JD Vance or Elon Musk or another big name, secondary persona, if they have to move Trump out of the limelight. But frankly, Trump is doing such a great job disabling everything and ruining everything, collapsing everything so that they can come in, that I don't know why his handlers would get rid of him. I could see his handlers wanting to elevate him to like a king of the world status because he's done such a good job with all of this. See, this is why Trump is dangerous, and we are foolish. We're foolish if we just write him off. You know, I never thought he would have won the first primary in the Republican Party. Never would have thought he would have won the first election. I never would have thought he would have won the second primary after what he did to us in 2020 and gain the hearts and minds and support of the medical freedom community. But he did. I never thought he would win the second presidency, but he did. And so we should diminish Donald J. Trump at our own peril, because he has been quite effective in absolutely destroying our infrastructure, our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, sanity in the United States of America. They would love to export that to the rest of the world, wouldn't they? Because then they would have the chaos, they would have the crisis, every crisis they ever need to lock us down again and again and again and again. Trump is the best guy they've ever had to do that, even if he is a puppet. And at this point, I'm wondering if he's a puppet. or if he is more invested in more of a leadership role than we have ever imagined. But Johnny Vedmore goes on to say Eric Weinstein designed the UN's economic migration policy and was part of the Jeffrey Epstein edge while it was 100% funded by Epstein and after Epstein's first conviction, as well as being Thiel's main man at Thiel Capital for years. Brett Weinstein placated complaints about COVID by seeding habitual plagiarists and intelligence assets like Robert Malone into the narrative. Wear your denim face mask, won't you? So this is why Brett Weinstein is important. We have to keep an eye on the Weinsteins and who they're getting behind. And I should have Johnny Vedmore on my program. He's so interesting, really interesting character. But I do see that we have Tiffany Cianci ready to go, warming up in the bullpen to talk about what is going on in private credit and private equity, the canary in the coal mine regarding economic collapse and instability here in the US and across the country. She has been on this since day one. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to give the rest of the show to Tiffany Cianci. We're going to have about 40 minutes with her, maybe 40 minutes, and then a heart out with Tiffany. So keep it tuned right here. You're going to need to hear this. I mentioned we need to get spiritually prepared. We need to get financially prepared. And we need to get prepared in every other way because chaos is the name of the game. And Tiffany is going to help us with the economic and financial preparation. But that starts with understanding what is going on. So when we come back, we're going to bring Tiffany in just a moment right here on the Shannon Joy Show. Hey everyone, I am so proud to recommend Shift Gold to this audience as the gold standard for metals purchasing and investing. I couldn't ask for a better partner to help people understand gold and silver and use them as strategic instruments to protect their family's financial future. Peter Schiff's teaching on markets has shaped my understanding of how economies grow and why they collapse. And I've used him as a critical source for my daily broadcast for over 10 years. The Shannon Joy Show audience already knows and loves Peter because he has been such a treasured educator over the years. He is now the preeminent source for rock-solid financial analysis around the world. And this is because he understands the immutable laws of natural markets and his stalwart unwillingness to veer from absolute truths regardless of economic fads and political pressures. Bottom line, he doesn't sell out. And that means a lot to me. I trust Shift Gold and you can too. Go to shiftgold.com/joy today to get started. You'll find some of the lowest spot prices for gold and silver and critical information on protecting your retirement savings with a gold or silver IRA. That's www.shiftgold.com/joy. Hedge against the chaos with our friends over at Shift Gold. Hey everyone, I just want to take a moment to thank one of my longtime friends, associates, my financial advisor, and a beloved sponsor of the Shannon Joy Show, Don Polano over at PCM and Associates. Don Polano, as many of you know, was the very first Shannon Joy Show advertiser almost 12 years ago, and he's been with us ever since. I trust Don Polano. He manages some of my assets and my retirement fund, and he's offering his services to all of you. He can take clients anywhere in the country and even across the globe over at PCM and Associates. And as you guys know, it is so important today. There's so much volatility and chaos. You need a human being, a person that you trust, and a person that shares your values. And that's Don Polano at PCM and Associates. So if you are looking for someone to help you manage your retirement or have investment advice, please consider calling Don Polano over at PCM and Associates. His number, 1-800-536-1368. That's 1-800-536-1368. And of course, you can go to PCMPolano.com. That is PCMPolano.com to learn about all of his services and get in contact with his team. Again, so thankful for Don Polano at PCM and Associates. And I think that you are really going to appreciate his services. So that number again, 1-800-536-1368 for a financial advisor that you can trust. Welcome back, everyone, to the Shannon Joy Show. Without further ado, I want to welcome back once again into the Joy Virtual Studio. Good friend of the Shannon Joy Show, Tiffany Cianci. She's the one of the best out there in terms of advocating for liberty, freedom, financial freedom, and calling out corruption. We're going to talk about private credit, private equity, and also this move to erase liability from chemical companies that is happening in red states as well. There's so much going on. Tiffany, I always say that I am white knuckled on the roller coaster ride with my audience because you never know what you're going to get on a headline. Today included. How are you holding up over there?
Honestly, on the daily right now, it sort of feels like a roller coaster is a good way to put it, except it never feels like we go into the slow zone. On a roller coaster, you get that slow build, and
Right.
at this point, it just feels like we're in drops.
Yeah.
Like always from the crest right on down, every single headline. I would give anything for like a nice slow build for a day or two. It'd be nice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, you texted me last week. As you guys know, Tiffany has been on the SJ show many times. By the way, her website, tiffanycianci.com, tiffanycianci.com. And you can follow her, and you must follow her on the Twitter. Her handle is at the Vino Mom. That's VINO, as in wine, vino. And one of the best economic and financial analysts out there in terms of what is happening with private credit. And so this is something, Tiffany, that I've been wanting to go over with my audience for quite some time. Big, big concerns with private credit now defaulting. They have closed down people's ability to come in and pull their money out, which is insane
Yeah.
at an accelerating pace. Why don't you lay out for the audience? It started last week. This has been happening kind of slow moving for the past 6 months, but last week things really ramped up to a very concerning level. So why don't you fill us in on what is going on?
So a lot of people mistake private credit and private equity for being interchangeable. The reality is that post 2008, pretty much anything that could be exploited without government oversight was and sort of took off. Private credit is like a bank that lends money but has no oversight that a bank would have and no FDIC insurance that a bank would have. Just like private equity, they restrict who's allowed to invest with them to the elite, the people with the biggest checkbooks, the people that are allowed to come in and make sweetheart deals that we're never given access to, or at least that's the way it was.
Mm.
We all started to see the writing on the wall about a year ago when suddenly private credit markets and private equity firms were trying to find ways to give everyday Americans access to buy into the big kids club. Right? We were moving to the big kids table, and suddenly everybody's money was welcome. Well, sweetheart, when the big kids invite you to the big kids table, it's because it's no longer the cool kids table. It's because
Right.
now there's a risk and they need to socialize it. And so we've been seeing over the last year that both private equity, which is largely funded by private credit, and private credit accounts and firms were all starting to show the inclination to ask for everyday Americans to start putting their money in because institutional investors were pulling their money out. We're
Mhm.
talking the Harvards, the Yales, the Brown universities, the pensions, the major investment funds were pulling their money out. They saw the writing on the wall and they're like, oh, well, we'll just go to the layperson that doesn't know any better.
Right.
They'll give us money for the next round. That's how we'll bail ourselves out of this. And we also saw it when Trump issued his executive order, which you and I talked about on here quite a bit, where
Yes.
he authorized alternative investments, including private equity and private credit, in the executive order that allows your 401k to go in and bail these guys out with your retirement accounts. And in that executive order, we should have known how dangerous this was because he also included a new legal immunity clause that makes it almost impossible for you to sue your fund manager through an ERISA.
Wow.
An ERISA is the type of lawsuit you use when your funds are mismanaged. It has to do with fiduciary obligations. It makes it almost impossible for you and the rest of the investees to file an ERISA class action if they mismanage your funds in private equity or private credit.
How many American 401ks, pensions, and retirement accounts do you think are now wrapped up in the private equity, private credit, percentage wise?
So right now, less than 1%, because just last week, the Department of Labor finally cleared the way for them to start pouring their money in there. We still
Okay.
have time to fix this, stop this. We have time
Yes.
when Trump issued his executive order, he required the SEC and the Department of Labor, which that seems like an odd place, to issue rules that would make it possible for your 401ks to start to be invested in this arena. And the Department of Labor only issued their restrictions last week. And in their new rules, they made it impossible for you to file these lawsuits. Now, those
Wow.
lawsuits were the only thing preventing your 401ks from being invested prior to this. Okay, prior to this, if your 401k managers made risky investments with your money, class action lawsuits almost immediately came in. And that's that 1% that's been invested prior to this. People, there's entire law firms dedicated to suing mismanaged fund managers.
Right.
Right. And so those lawsuits have kept them from making poor choices like this with your money. And the Department of Labor last week issued the new rules that have now made that just about impossible. There is now nothing stopping them from taking your $12 trillion. That's how much Americans have invested in 401ks right now in the United States. $12 trillion.
Wow. Wow.
Now, when we match that number, it's a very magic number, with the $4 trillion in assets that private equity can't sell right now because they've lost institutional investors, and the $8 trillion to $12 trillion that's currently tied up in the private credit markets that have gone absolutely boom in the last 5 weeks. That bubble is bursting in real time. You see that that $12 trillion is the perfect bailout
Wow.
for both markets.
So, what has been happening with, so at this point, most Americans are shielded. Well, they were shielded from these very shady, very lightly regulated mechanisms.
Yes.
Trump has opened the door to liability protection for these institutions, and so basically, they're laying the groundwork to trap Americans into these, and then obviously they'll pull the rug out. What happened? So, but at this point, it's pretty much the kind of rich elites, the people who, I mean, because there are a lot of people trying to get their money out of these, and they're like all of them, like Blue Owl and BlackRock, and there's a whole list of firms that are basically saying we're shutting down, we're not giving anyone their money. So
Correct.
people are trying to get, it's a liquidity crisis. People are trying to get access to their cash. And these companies are saying you can't have it. And this is just the elite group right now. I mean, these are the cool kids. What's going on with that? Because it's insane. I mean, I saw the headlines last week and it was crazy.
So it's been a free-for-all for the last several years where these private credit institutions without oversight from the SEC have been loaning money like crazy to private equity firms, but also to tech companies and especially to data build out, to data, like all the data centers. They've been loaning tons and tons, and I mean trillions of dollars to the data center build out plans. And Blue Owl was really one of like the precursors to that. And what we're seeing is they've been giving money, but they've been under not regulating, but under analyzing the deals. And in under analyzing the deals, they've also been allowing under collateralizing the loans. Or, and this is my suspicion, and we won't know until the aftermath, that they've been collateralizing multiple lines of credit with the same assets, which is what I suspect.
Right.
And so what's happening is that they've given money to the tech sector recently and the private equity sectors, literally to the tune of an undiversified portfolio. And what happened was UBS a couple months ago did an analysis where they figured out that if AI just does one thing, and it manages to reduce the value of software as a service programs, SaaS, which is what it's going to do. Like I'm going to give you an example. Right now, you might pay Microsoft every month $20 a month for access to their suite of offerings. Okay. You might also give $50 a month to Adobe so that you can edit your podcast. Okay. If I take that code right now and I go over to Claude Code and I say, reverse engineer me Adobe, it can do it. Okay. Why would companies keep paying for it? And so suddenly UBS realized that a lot of the software as a service models that have borrowed money from these companies might not be so valuable. And Atlassian, which is a software as a service model, has dropped 26% because people started replicating their services with free coding. And so all of these companies that have borrowed this money might not be worth much in just a few months because you can just make it for free. Why would people keep paying monthly to the tune of trillions of dollars worldwide if you can make it for free and reverse engineer it? Okay. Even Claude Code can be reverse engineered. We know because they accidentally posted their source code last week and it was reverse engineered in under 9 hours in Python, right? So All of these companies were at risk, and UBS did the analysis and realized that they could see between 15 and 24% default rates across the spectrum of all of the private credit markets, and it triggered major alarm bells.
Yeah.
People started trying to draw down their money.
Right.
Well, it got to the point where between the data centers that were having deals fall apart, the realization that these data centers were on 10 to 20-year paybacks, but they'd have to be fully replaced every 3 years because of technology, right? These chips only last 3 years.
Right.
They also realized that the technology companies that were borrowing this money were doing it all off books. They were creating shell companies and they were doing it there. So Meta, as an example, is building the largest data center in the world down like near Louisiana. They moved it off books with like a 20-year payback. And it's not showing on any of their SEC filings that they owe $1 trillion.
Wow.
And people realized these data centers have to be fully replaced every 3 years. It would take 20 years to pay them back. They don't have a viable business model. The software as a service companies they've given money to are at risk now. What we're seeing in real time is everybody realizing this bubble is shaking like this and ready to blow. And so people started drawing their money out. And when
Right.
they did, not just the little guys like Blue Owl and Clearwater, which were the early ones, right? They were the early ones that started to show symptoms. They had to halt withdrawals to their
Yeah.
investors and say, you can't take this money. We don't have it to cover. Not just them. We're talking about BlackRock and Blackstone both had to halt withdrawals. Blackstone had to send their executives to borrow 400 million in cash on their own and invest it in their funds to keep it going.
Wow.
So their
And
executives had to go liquidate their own assets to
wow.
shore up the fund. Then we saw KKR and Apollo halt it. And then JP Morgan announced that they're halting all lending to private credit grantors.
Unbelievable. That was last week. And typically for context, people who invest in these types of funds, there are conditions within the contract that say that, you can't take out at one point any more than like 5% or
I
so.
can't hear you, Shannon.
Oh, you lose my audio? Okay, can you hear me, Tiffany?
Um,
Did you press a
guys,
button?
I can't hear you.
So, okay. So we're gonna go solo. Okay, you hear me. Okay, there's you are. You can hear me?
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Don't press any buttons. That's my rule with Annie. I don't press anything. So just so people understand, typically there are there's a clause in a lot of these contracts where you can't take out or they don't have to honor any more than 5% of a withdrawal, right? And last
Yes.
week we saw 20% withdrawals, 41% withdrawals, and that was in those smaller ones, and then they have built out. So what we're looking at now, Tiffany, I know this sounds absolutely terrible, but I'm kind of loving the idea of the AI bubble and the tech bubble finally bursting because we've been talking about this for so long. I would love to see these data centers get defunded, unfunded, all of these projects pulled apart. I would love to see these tech giants going down. But
It's easy to hope for that, Shannon, but the
right,
reality is that if it does, we're talking about the collapse of the worldwide market. Right
I know.
now, all of our markets are propped up by 5 or 6 companies that were the only spending we saw in the United States markets last year. And so, yes, I agree. Like there's a just desserts. It was 1 year ago last week that I had my super viral video where I said within a year the bubble would start to pop.
Right.
A year
Yep.
ago last week. I didn't want to be right. I
Mhm.
didn't want to be. I just saw the writing on the wall. I never wanted to be right because I know what that means. Most people don't know that for every 1% increase in unemployment, you see 45,000 Americans die.
It's
Do you know that?
unbelievable. It's horrible. It's
And
absolutely
because
horrible.
they give up medical care, they don't get treatment, they start cutting costs, they end up homeless. There's lots of personal suicides, right? You see
Mhm.
a large spectrum of reasons. And so seeing the mass layoffs that are being attributed to AI, they are not AI related. It's
Mhm.
greed. Oracle
Oh
just laid
yeah.
off 30,000 people and did a bunch of stock buybacks. Salesforce just laid off 25 or 30,000 people and they borrowed $1 billion and did stock buybacks and their CEO's net worth doubled while they laid
Mhm.
off 30,000 people. It's not a flex, but it has become the norm, right?
Well, yeah, and I think that to your point, it's unfortunate, right? But we know that the stock market, really since the beginning of the Trump presidency and even before, there was always funny business, but it has accelerated and become more brazen and more blatant in the last in the last, I'd say, 10 years. But we've known that all of the gains in the stock market, every boomer looking at their portfolio and, thinking they're the richest person in the world, and look at my real estate, look how much money my house is worth, look how much money the stock market is worth. And and I know that has been largely inflated, fueled by
Yes.
money printing by the central bankers, and then feeding into these corrupt corporations who have all created monopolies for themselves and boxed out competition through things like lockdowns of 2020. So we know where this is all going, right? And you're right. Like from my perspective, it's going to be painful, but it has to happen, Tiffany. At some point, people
There
have
has to be a
realize,
correction. There's no question there has to be, but what we're looking at right now is unlike anything we've seen before. Because at any point in history prior to this, where you saw massive spending in infrastructure expansion, we saw it with railroads, we saw it with roads, we saw it with adding fiber optics so that the internet would work across the country. We saw it when we installed lines for the telegram, okay? Whenever you've seen massive overspending on infrastructure, in each of those circumstances, we saw job creation with it, and we saw something that was going to serve us for 30, 50 years. And so we had 50 years to see a return on that investment and growth that it would create. These data centers that we're spending trillions of dollars on, right? One of the most shocking things that we noticed was that Jerome Powell just said that last year, almost all of the GDP growth we had was related to data center build out, and we saw a net loss of jobs. It didn't create a single job. It destroyed jobs. And the other thing is, we're not going to see 30, 50 years. These data centers are warehouses where every single chip inside them has to be replaced every 2 to 3 years. Okay. We're not going to see a 20 or 30 or 50-year return. And that's why this is reckless. It's dangerous, and the correction is going to be painful. But there's not all negativity, right? We do see other areas. Like, for instance, there's 147 countries right now that are mandating localized data storage. For those countries, sovereign AI systems might be a good bet. That's possible, right? That might be bubble proof. We see sovereign AI that is going to deliver people back the power over their data, which is a huge push right now. I think that's probably a long-term safe bet. But but again, not a financial investor. I can't tell people where to spend their money. But everything's not bad, but a lot of it's really, really bad right now, and it's not looking good for a multitude of areas. And I think there's a way we need to tell all of your viewers to protect themselves right now, because I know our time is limited. All of your viewers need to go find out who's managing your 401k if you have one. And I realize that's privilege that many don't have. If you have a 401k, you need to contact your fund managers right now. You're going to send them a letter, an email. You're going to put it in writing. You're going to ask for confirmation receipt. Please send me an email back saying you've received this. Send it certified mail. And you're going to say that you are revoking any explicit or implied permission to invest your funds in any alternative assets, private credit, private equity, high risk, including when it's tied to accounts that are targeted date accounts. You are revoking all permissions related to private credit, private equity, and alternative assets. Okay? You're going to say that. You're going to say explicit or implied. You think you have my permission? I'm telling you, you don't. If it's in writing, you have my permission, I am revoking it.
Right. Okay. And that can protect people with their 401k. What about, I mean, we are going to get hit. I mean, there's going to be a collapse. What does that look like for the average person? What are we going to see in terms of job losses, businesses going out of business, inflation, and then even worse than all of that, once they create the crisis, we always know the government's going to come in and try to pimp something even worse in the midst of the crisis. How should people be prepared for what's coming?
90% of Americans have no savings. They don't have anyone in a 401k, so that the 401k stuff's not going to hurt them. The job losses will. But the bigger concern I have right now is that as we see job losses expand, which we are seeing in record numbers right now, we have the highest layoff numbers that we've seen since 2009, which is really scary, right? We're seeing higher layoff numbers right now than we saw in the non-mandated job losses during COVID. But what I'm really worried about is that during COVID, almost every state in the United States depleted all of the savings they had to shore up their unemployment funds. And that's why they were able to give long-term unemployment during COVID. Then the federal government gave them subsidies to make that even longer. But they depleted all of those funds. more than 70% of the states in the United States have not replenished those funds.
Oh, wow.
We're also going to see massive deficit spending if we want to pay out unemployment claims in the United States at the state level and the federal level. None of that money was ever put back.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have the safety net to protect people from the recklessness of these billionaires. This is a created crisis.
Oh, yeah.
It's created. Nobody didn't see this coming, but these billionaires were so busy building bunkers and hoarding as much as they could. I swear it's a sociopathy. At this
Mm-hmm.
point, they are hoarders. Anyone that calls one of these people anything, they're not a smart businessman. They're hoarders because you can be a billionaire and still pay a living wage. You can be a billionaire and still treat your employees well. But why would you when you can lay off 30,000 people, borrow $1 billion, and do another stock buyback?
Right.
You already were billionaire. You were a multitude of billionaires. And
So we're going to
instead,
see
you're
another,
laying people off when you don't have to because you're experiencing record
right.
profits.
And
It's a choice.
so we're going to see a collapse, and then we're going to see them printing a massive amount of money, which is going to create
Probably.
insane inflation. So,
We've already got insane inflation. And
yeah.
right now, if we don't get the Strait of Hormuz open fast, we're going to see food prices double or even triple, which actually is going to lead us to our next segment. And I know we're running short of time, but
Yeah.
we're going to, right now, we have seen all of the fertilizers go up by 60% in cost, 48 to 62% over the last 5 weeks. And it's planting season right now. Farmers are choosing not to order their seeds for the next planting because they have to spend every dime they have and take on debt to buy fertilizer right now, which was completely foreseeable.
Right.
We saw this and we did nothing. We made bad decisions.
Well, this is what Donald Trump, I mean, this was why everyone was very frustrated with his decision to embroil the United States in the conflict with Iran on behalf of Israel. Now we are hopelessly entangled. We have 57,000 troops being sent over, troops on the ground. We have an erratic presidency. There is no indication that Iran, who controls the Strait of Hormuz, has any intention of opening it anytime soon, which I think is probably why the president is lashing out on Truth Social and throwing that tantrum. So in addition to economic collapse and hyperinflation that will make COVID 19 and the lockdowns of COVID of 2020 pale in comparison. We're going to see now what looks to be food shortages and because of fertilizer or the lack of fertilizer. And potentially we're seeing discussion of famine. I don't know what famine looks like. I know people are talking about famine. Are they talking about 100 million Americans starving to death and dying? Is that what's going to happen? Are we going to have anarchy and crazy, and chaos in the streets? Are we going full Mad Max? Is that where it's going?
What we're seeing right now is the next step in the consolidation of the control of our food supply in America if we don't do something fast.
Okay.
So this actually is a segue that is reasonable. Everything that's happened with the war, everything that has happened with the collapse of these markets has happened because of corruption in our political system. Our political system has been captured by billionaires and by monopolists at every stage, from the localized mayors and these county councils that are getting bought off to approve data centers that thousands of people are coming out to oppose and no one locally is approving of. Right?
Pause real quick.
You're seeing this everywhere.
Pause real quick.
Yeah,
there are a few videos making their way across social media of gym stadiums full of local people screaming at like 5 elected officials on the zoning board or the town board saying no to the data centers. And these elected officials are passing the ordinances. They're just in the face of what the communities are saying. So this is happening across the country. Great pushback. And obviously we're going to have some hurdles here, but
same thing's happening in my county. I live in Frederick County, Maryland, and we're now engaging in a referendum initiative to try to overturn the decision making of our local government because they went and approved these when the entire town came out against it. We're done with it. We're done with corruption. We're not going to keep allowing it.
Yes. Well, and so this moves into, I mean, the theme today too, immunity for all the billionaires and liability protections for all the billionaires. The pharmaceutical companies got it in 2020. AI companies and data centers have been granted this immunity. We have, as you just mentioned a moment ago, financial institutions who would like to steal your retirement to bail out their private equity and private credit. Trump passing language that will give those financial managers immunity. And now we have the chemical companies, glyphosate. How is this playing into the chemical companies now achieving immunity and liability protection from this administration, and why is that so dangerous to Americans in terms of our food?
So this legislative session, we have seen something that we've rarely seen genuinely in modern history, which is one initiative that has cropped up at every single state, local legislative government, and the federal government over and over and over again. And the American people, 98% of them don't approve of it. 98% of the American people disagree with the idea of granting immunity to pesticide companies. What we have is Bayer Monsanto and the Modern Ag Alliance, which is funded entirely by the 4 companies that have captured monopoly control over the entire farming and agriculture supply chain. Okay. And all of these companies, I want to stress, are not American companies. We have allowed international monopolies to capture our entire food supply. All of our meat packers are owned in Brazil. Bayer Monsanto is a German company, and they are spending tens of millions of dollars nationwide to try to get themselves immunity from getting sued over and over again because they are killing our farmers and our children. Okay. When you see glyphosate, which is an herbicide, not a pesticide, it's an herbicide, right? You see it, but it's across a multitude of chemicals. We saw in North Dakota and in Georgia, they were able to pass pesticide immunity at the local and state level. They got that through. Well, 2 weeks ago, they tried again in Kentucky. And in Kentucky, the governor vetoed it. Well, the Republican supermajority in Kentucky just overrode his veto and granted Bayer Monsanto their pesticide immunity, right? So at the federal level, you would think it couldn't possibly, like, things move slowly there. No, not for them. For Bayer Monsanto, we have seen 4 separate efforts in just this legislative session to get pesticide immunity through. We saw it in the appropriations bill. First of all, pesticide immunity has no business in funding our government in the appropriations bill. Okay. We saw it in the Senate. We saw it in the House. Okay. We saw it on a standalone initiative. And all of those were overcome by Americans coming out in force and screaming through the phone at the senators in the Republican and the Democrat side. Okay. We fought, and we got all 3 of those thrown out. So what happens? 2 weeks ago, they put it in the farm bill. The bill that's supposed to serve farmers, the ones that are being killed by the chemicals in these pesticides. Farmers have a multitude, 1,000% higher risk of dying of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma or leukemia than any other profession in the United States. You suppose it's all the fresh air?
Right.
Must be all the fresh air and sunshine. Couldn't possibly be the chemicals.
Right. Well, how many chemicals are they dumping on us from the skies, as well? Right.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. As a matter of fact, a bunch of farmers have recently been analyzing their soil and seeing a 10 times magnitude of aluminum in their soil, wondering where it came from. Everywhere, right? But what we're seeing is Bayer Monsanto, who has been sued over and over again. They just settled a lawsuit over glyphosate literally 5 weeks ago for $7.2 billion in damages for all of the children and farmers that were harmed by them. And now they're spending tens of millions to get immunity so that they never have to pay those checks again. They're spending tens of millions to save tens of billions. And this German company is buying off our politicians and buying off our political system to not have to pay for the deaths of American citizens.
So
here's the Americans that feed our nation.
So here's the question. I mean, everyone on the live chat right now, we're about to stick our head in the oven, Tiffany, because this is and Guitar Lily has a great point here. So then what's the point of doing anything? What's the point of bottom up activism? What's the point of calling your 401k person or showing up to a meeting or getting involved if local governments are just as corrupt, they're just as bought off, and we can't win? Like, what should people do? Talk to us about what should people do, because
we can win. Okay, Wyoming, they tried to get pesticide immunity there, and the local people came out in force, and they stopped it, and they killed that initiative. Wyoming just saved their farmers. Okay,
right.
Just because Kentucky and North Dakota and Georgia didn't put their farmers first and took this money doesn't mean that the other 47 states have to follow. We now have the example. Wyoming just did it. They protected their farmers. we can do it too. But at the federal level, we have beaten this back 3 times. This is just number 4. No
Okay.
one's up here. We're going to start calling today. Everyone watching your show should be calling and saying, remove pesticide immunity from the farm bill now. A
Okay.
farm bill should serve farmers. But the other thing we can do, and this is really what I think is most important, is we can back the 2 bills we have in the House and the Senate right now. Okay. Senator Cory Booker, 6 months ago saw this happening, and he drafted the Pesticide Injury Accountability Act, which
Okay.
codifies into federal law the right to sue any pesticide company that hurts an American.
Okay.
You are codified to go to federal court, and this would restore that right for North Dakota. It doesn't circumvent their state laws, but in North Dakota and Kentucky and Georgia, those farmers could go to federal court and seek recompense.
Very good.
This would codify it.
Okay.
Now, right now, President Trump just had his DOJ and his comptroller send over an amicus brief to the Supreme Court where Bayer is asking for a pesticide immunity from the Supreme Court. Well, if we pass the Pesticide Injury Accountability Act, Supreme Court's ruling is moot.
Okay.
They enforce the laws that we create. If we create a new law, they uphold it. That's their job. We need
Well,
to pass the Pesticide Injury Accountability Act, and we also have the No Glyphosate Immunity Act right now in the House, co-sponsored by Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna, which we love, right? And
Yep.
Rep Luna and a host of others. Nobody wants this, but Bayer Monsanto has spent $9.125 million buying off this administration. Okay, they've spent $9.125 million, and they've planted 19 individuals into the Trump administration. Do you know Susie Wiles? Do you know what her job was before she was chief of staff?
I do. We've done deep dives on Susie Wiles, but please remind us.
Susie Wiles
Yeah.
Was, first of all, Benjamin Netanyahu's campaign manager in 2020. But then she went to work for Ballard Partners, where she was a senior managing partner at a lobbying group. And her 2 biggest clients, Pfizer and Bayer Monsanto.
Of course. Of
And
course.
so was Pam Bondi, by the way. She was there too.
Unbelievable.
Which is, I'm sure, had nothing to do with the way that they drafted the amicus brief to go over to the Supreme Court. Nothing to do with it.
So how do we get Trump to sign the bill, though? So say we pass the bills. I mean, what's the likelihood of Trump signing it if Susie Wiles is leading him around by the nose?
Great question. I don't think he can handle snubbing any more Maha voters.
Okay.
Right now, we have Republicans that rented the Maha vote. They need to buy it. And at this point, they turn their back on him, and the midterms are going to be a bloodbath if they don't start doing what the American people demand. If we pass this law and he doesn't sign it, I think it would be catastrophic for his entire administration.
You know, Tiffany, we have about 3 minutes left. I get the sense that Donald Trump doesn't seem to care about the midterms. When it comes to Maha, when it comes to the Epstein files, when it comes to the most unpopular war in human history, I don't think that there's ever been a more universally unpopular and despised war than Donald Trump's war with Iran. Both political parties, from the madness coming from his Truth Social, the instability, it doesn't seem to me that he cares about the midterms. I think that the book is already written on the midterms, unless he cancels them because of an emergency. Unless we have an energy emergency, a food emergency, an economic collapse, a financial emergency. And this is what keeps me up at night, because this guy does not seem to be worried about midterms. And the question is why?
Yeah, I agree with you that he's taken a very devil may care attitude about this, very laissez-faire, right? But what I can say is that the people in the House and the Senate, they do care about the midterms.
Yeah.
And we're seeing record numbers of retirement announcements because they're terrified.
Yes.
You don't see record retirements because people are feeling like it doesn't matter or that there's not going to be an election. You're seeing record numbers of retirement announcements because people see the writing on the wall that the midterms are going to matter and that we are not going to keep allowing what's been going on.
Yeah.
Now, that said, if we just get in another crop of people owned by a bunch of corporate PACs and APAC and every other person that comes in and offers a couple $1 million, then we don't get any better. You know, there's my friend Nico actually is giving scores on TikTok right now for how much money people take and whether or not they've taken the integrity pledge. And we're seeing the first people taking those pledges that show you're not going to take money from outside influence. You're not going to take money from these corporate PACs. Representative Ro Khanna started the No PACs caucus. It's growing. Let's
I
grow it.
like it. Listen, I'm an all of the above kind of gal. I tend to prefer bottom up, localized action.
Yes.
I don't like getting involved with Washington, D.C., but there are people like Tom Massey in Washington, D.C., who are continuing to fight the good fight. And we gotta attack it from every single angle. So I appreciate a great update, Tiffany. Things are crazy.
Yeah.
But we can continue to fight back. We have to keep our heads about us, keep calm, carry on. It's going to get nutty, but there are opportunities to pursue liberty and freedom and do what is right. And there are opportunities to even thrive in chaotic times. And I know that you talk a lot about that on all of your platforms. TiffanyCianci.com is her website. That's TiffanyCianci.com. Follow her on Twitter. Her handle is at the Vino Mom. 30 seconds, Tiffany, to wrap it up and tell people what you need to do.
I just want everybody to remember that you have 93% of your values in common with the neighbor you think you have the least in common with, and 8% of your values in common with a billionaire. Reach
It's
out to
true.
one another and build bridges. Stop
Yeah,
letting them divide you. Billionaires pay us to not care about each other. Reach out, build communities, and that's the only way we're really going to change things. They need us divided
absolutely.
to keep this going.
That's right. Unity. Tiffany Cianci, thank you so much for being with us today. We are out of time. Thank you to Inez Annie Cyrus for producing the show today. We will be back tomorrow, everyone, to do this all again. We have a lot to talk to and take apart with, regards to what Tiffany just revealed to us. So we'll be back tomorrow to do it all again. Thank you for all your support. We'll see you tomorrow on the Shannon Joy Show.